So welcome back to a brand new video on the channel, guys. In today's video, what I thought we'd do is have a little bit of a discussion about each championship manager and how they've got on so far. The managers who we think are underachieving, overachieving, or who we think are doing pretty well so far. We'll be going through the championship from bottom to top, discussing each championship manager from each club. I'll basically be giving my opinion on what I made of them so far, the job I think they're doing, and if I think they're in danger of being sacked anytime soon. What'll be interesting to know from you guys is, first of all, what have you made of your manager's performance so far this season? Also, we did have some midweek games going on in the championship as well, so make sure you leave a comment in the comments down below as to what did you make of your team's performance. We had some absolutely bonkers games going on in midweek, but as you can see on screen now, guys, that is the championship table, and that is how it is currently lining up. We've got Leeds and Middlesbrough as the top two currently, and then the bottom three we're currently looking at, we got Ipswich Town, Hurst City and Reading all making up the bottom three. So we'll be going through the championship from bottom to top, discussing each championship manager, what I made of them so far. So without further ado, let's get into this discussion. And the big news breaking from the championship today is that Ipswich Town have gone ahead and sacked their manager, Paul Hurst. Now, I've had to go back and re-edit this part as it has literally just happened today, but I think everyone had this feeling though that this was inevitable sooner rather than later, really. With Ipswich currently sat bottom of the championship on 9 points, only one win so far this season. There is a part of me that does feel a little bit sorry for Paul Hurst, really, because the task he was asked to do at Ipswich was no easy feat. You know, a lot of new players coming in from either League One or League Two, a few loans from the Premier League as well, bringing in players to the club who, on the face of it, probably weren't good enough. He was trying to develop a new philosophy at the same time as well. He just had too much on his plate, and in the end, he probably wasn't the right man for the job in the end. Currently being talked about, I think that Paul Lambert is the favourite to go ahead and replace him, so Ipswich fans, let me know down below what you make of that news. I think that Marcus Evans does need to take quite a bit of the responsibility for this poor start to the season that Ipswich Town have had, but with Paul Hurst being sacked, I mean, it's an interesting season now in the Championship. Ipswich fans, let me know down below what are all your thoughts on this. After another loss in midweek against Leeds United, I think most people saw this coming, really. So Paul Hurst is now the second manager to be sacked in the Championship. And just sat above them currently in the Championship, we've got Hull City and Nigel Atkins, a manager who hasn't really convinced me for Hull so far this season. The thing with Hull so far is, in a lot of their performances, they've not actually been that bad. Like, they've not been on the receiving end of a lot of battering so far this season. They've been losing 1-0 and just by the odd goal so far this season. When they played my team, Preston, a couple of weeks ago, they got desperately unlucky not to win that game. They hit the post and crossbar about 3 or 4 times in that game. Hull are another one of those sides who haven't been helped by the transfer window they had. We saw a lot of their players leave on the free in the summer transfer window. The players they've been brought in haven't really recuperated that quality, especially going forward. You look at the amount of goals they've scored this season, only 11 in 14 games. Last season, when you looked at Hull last season, they were conceding a lot of goals, but scoring wasn't a problem for them. That's sort of been flipped this season, and Atkins needs to turn this around sooner rather than later, because like Ipswich, they're only on 9 points and already 4 points from safety. And then to make up the bottom three, we have Paul Clement and Reading FC. Paul Clement, another manager who is coming under increasing pressure at the moment, with Reading's performances so far this season being very dreary on the whole. You know, at the start of the season, I thought there was a bit of optimism around Reading with how they started it. They weren't necessarily picking up the results, but the performances were quite encouraging that they would go on and maybe do something this season. It's quite baffling, really, that only 2 years ago this Reading side was sat in the playoff final and, you know, was 1 game away from the Premier League. Since then, Reading has just gone on a downward spiral, and that's, you know, looking to get out of control at the moment. The problems that Reading are having at the moment, I don't think are necessarily, you can't pin it all on the manager. You know, there's problems that go a lot deeper than that at Reading at the moment, and there's a bit of a toxic feel about the club at the moment. With the way that the club's being run at the moment, it sort of filters down to the manager and players, although the manager hasn't helped himself so far this season with the stale performances that are coming in, week out. There have been odd exceptions to that. You know, we've seen Reading score quite a few goals so far this season, actually, scoring 19 in 14 already. But that's not translated to Reading picking up results so far this season, and sat in the bottom three so far, there's a real possibility of relegation this season. Just above the relegation zone, we then have Rotherham United and Paul Werner. I actually think he's done a very good job with Rotherham so far this season. A couple of instances where I thought that Rotherham perhaps could have gone a little bit more attacking in some games, but on the whole, I think we sort of expected Rotherham to be in and around this region of the table. But what they have shown so far this season in the Championship is that they are going to be competitive. You know, going into this season, there were a few people, myself included at one point, thinking that they would just be wrote off at the bottom of the table. They didn't have the quality to compete in the Championship, but that's not really been the case. The transfer window they had, you know, they looked to sort of keep the core group of players that got them promoted to the Championship. They've entrusted them to go ahead and keep them there this year, and you sense that there's a lot of resilience about this Rotherham side. The home form's been decent so far, and they have started to pick up some results on the road so far. Getting a 0-0 draw against Middlesbrough in midweek, I think, is a very good result for Rotherham. Goals so far, I think, maybe a problem long term for Rotherham. They've only scored 10 in 14 so far, so averaging less than 1 goal per game is never a good thing in the Championship, and long term, that's where they're going to have to look into. But even so, I think that so far he's doing a good job with Rotherham. With Neil Harris and Millwall, it's definitely not been the start of the season that they were intending to get, you know, especially coming off the high of last year, you know, where arguably he was the manager of the season, really, with what he was able to achieve with Millwall with their first season back in the Championship. This season for them, it's been a bit of a come down, really. Defensively, I thought they've been a little bit all over the place so far, but I don't think that anyone's really ever questioned that Neil Harris isn't the right man for this Millwall team, you know, there's no question about that in my mind. I think we are seeing results slowly turn around for Millwall. They've picked up 2 wins in their last 3 Championship matches now. What's been Millwall's main problem so far this season has been their defence, really. They've been conceding some just abysmal goals. Shocking defending from them at times, which is a far cry from how good they were last season. And so far this season and last season as well, I've seen a lot of similarities between Millwall and my team, Preston. And with Preston and Alex Neil sat just above Millwall in the Championship, currently in 19th place on 13 points so far. It's not been the start to the season, which we're going to be cherishing. Already this season, in 14 league games, we've conceded 28 goals, which is an average of 2 goals a game, which is absolutely shocking for Championship football. That's, of course, meaning that we need to score 3 goals per game to pick up all 3 points. The game we had in midweek was absolutely chaotic. In the end, we did walk away with all 3 points. We managed to beat Brentford by 4 goals to 3, and we are on a bit of a decent roll in the Championship at the moment. We're unbeaten in our last 4 games now, and I think that our next 2 games are absolutely crucial for Preston and Alex Neil. They're against Rotherham and Ipswich Town. If we get 6 points from those 2 games, we'll see ourselves slowly building up the Championship, and we'll get back to mid-table, and we'll look to building it from there. I do have quite a bit of sympathy for Alex Neil, the fact that he wasn't backed in the latest transfer window. You know, last season we saw Preston get this close to the playoffs. We were in contention on the final day. We just missed out by the skin of our teeth, and we just needed a bit more investment into certain areas of the pitch from Trevor Hemmings. Alex Neil didn't get that investment, and the way we started the season was absolutely shocking. I don't think we will go down. We've already showed so far this season that scoring goals isn't going to be a problem for us. We've already scored 23 goals, the same amount of goals as Sheffield United, and they're currently sat 3rd in the Championship. It's just defensively where we have been so poor, and I think that for that defensive record, Alex Neil does need to take quite a bit of stick for that, actually. Bolton Wanderers and Phil Parkinson, it's another one where I can't really be too critical because of all the turmoil that Bolton have been going through in recent years with, you know, all the financial troubles they've been having. Phil Parkinson's really been working on their shoestring budget there, and to keep Bolton in the Championship last year was a fantastic job. The way they started this season as well was absolutely excellent, beating West Brom on the opening day of the season. They were in the top 6 after 5 games or so, but there is a little bit of a part of me that just feels like Bolton can be a little bit better than what they actually are with some of the players they've got, especially going forward. I feel like sometimes Phil Parkinson does sit up a little bit too defensively in some games, and we've seen instances of Bolton so far this season. It takes them to go 1 or 2 goals behind for them to really open up and start playing some attacking football. Don't get me wrong, I do think that he's doing a very good job with Bolton Wanderers with the resources he's got at that club. I just feel like at times Bolton could be a little bit better. And then to Gary Rowett and Stoke City, and there's definitely a part of me that's thinking that it could be sooner rather than later that we do see Gary Rowett get the sack, with Stoke currently sat 17th in the Championship. I mean, don't get me wrong, it does only take 2 or 3 games, you know, to win on the bounce to completely turn your form around in the Championship. That's just the nature of the league with how tight it is at the moment. Obviously, they spent a lot of money in the transfer window, that's no secret really, and with Gary Rowett being, you know, sort of an experienced Championship manager, I thought he'd be a safe pair of hands for this Stoke squad really, but I don't know what it is with him. Maybe he's not completely getting through to the players or something like that. Their defensive record so far this season has been very shoddy. The game in midweek was a decent away point against Sheffield United, however, I did think they got slightly fortunate with that really. It was Joe Allen scoring a late equaliser to go ahead and rescue the point for them in the end. On paper, that Stoke squad should be in and around the top 6 as a bare minimum, and if they're not there, you know, come Christmas, I feel like it'll be the end for Gary Rowett at Stoke. With Dean Smith and Aston Villa, we spoke about this one quite a lot in the video I did last week, so make sure you guys do go ahead and check that out. I went a little bit more in depth as to what I thought of Dean Smith and whether I thought he'd be the right fit for Aston Villa, but the game they lost in midweek does show that this Aston Villa squad does have, you know, a long way to go from now till the end of the season until they are the finished article. In terms of attacking options, that Villa squad's got an absolute plethora of them. Defensively, they can be stretched very thin, you know. We've seen Jedinak play at centre-back so far this season, Hutton's played there at times as well, and a couple other players filling in there. The January transfer window, I feel like, will be crucial for Aston Villa. Do I think that Aston Villa can make the top 6? In his first season, it's a possibility. Obviously, they're not too far off it at the moment. It's still very tight in the Championship in this region of the table. The players they sign in January will give us a good indication as to whether they will be pushing on to the top 6 this season or not. I get a gut feeling that they will come close, but there are probably going to be 6 teams who will be better than them this season. I'm not so sure. And then with Thomas Frank at Brentford, he's really not got off to the best of starts with Brentford so far, losing his first 2 games in charge. And Brentford on the whole are really not on a good run of form in the Championship currently. It was only a few weeks ago where we were seeing them, you know, in the top 6, looking like a really convincing team in the Championship, scoring loads of goals, playing free-flowing football. But defensively lately, Brentford have really shot themselves in their own foot. They're without a win in their last 7 games now, and they are just starting to slowly trickle down the Championship. I do feel as if losing Ryan Woods has had an effect on them, and their goalkeeper Daniel Bentley has also been someone who's dropped a few clangers actually in recent weeks, someone I've not been too convinced by as of late. And so we can't really judge Thomas Frank so far, as he has only been in charge of 2 games, but he really needs to get a result in his next game for Brentford, otherwise they'll just continue to slip down the Championship. But with the squad of players they've got there, I mean, no doubt that they will be able to turn this around sooner rather than later, but with the current run of form they're on at the moment, they're on a bit of a downward spiral. Sheffield Wednesday and look at is a really bizarre one actually. Sheffield Wednesday now find themselves 14th in the Championship. It was literally only 2 or 3 games ago where they were sat in the playoffs and on a fantastic run in the Championship, but back-to-back defeats has led Sheffield Wednesday down the table, and once again it has been defensive blunders which have cost them so far this season. I do just find it really bizarre with the current goalkeeper situation going on at Sheffield Wednesday at the moment. They've got 3 goalkeepers there currently in Westwood, Dawson and Wildsmith. They're currently playing Dawson as their number 1, and in my opinion he is the worst of those 3 goalkeepers. I understand why Westwood isn't playing, but to not at least use Wildsmith as the number 1 after how Dawson has been playing in recent weeks is a little bit baffling to me. We saw them lose 3-0 in midweek against QPR. They do have some very good options going forward, already scoring 20 goals so far this season, but defensively they do need to really tighten up, and ultimately that's what's going to cost them come the end of the season. And then to possibly one of the most underrated managers so far this season, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but it is Steve McLaren at QPR. What a fantastic job he's been doing in recent weeks at QPR. After they got absolutely humiliated away at West Brom, losing by 7-1, I thought that would be the end for Steve McLaren. I thought he's lost the dressing room this early on. Defensively, they were looking absolute shambles. They didn't look like they could score goals. The midfield was looking very passive. I genuinely thought that could be the end for him. 2 more games like that and Steve McLaren will be out of a job. Since then, there's just been this changing mentality with QPR. Defensively, they've been very strong lately. They've won 3 out of their last 4 games in the Championship, and they're actually playing some really attractive, really nice to watch football. Luke Freeman's been pulling the strings for them recently. Ez has been absolutely fantastic, making driving runs forward from midfield. And with how bad they were at the start of the season, the fact that they're only 4 points off the playoffs now is just a testament to the fantastic job which Steve McLaren has been doing there recently. Paul Cook has been doing a fantastic job at Wigan Athletic so far this season. Their away record, I still can't get my head around really. At home, of course, they've been absolutely superb this season. Stretching back to last season, actually, they're unbeaten in their last 14 home league matches. The DW has been an absolute fortress for them. Reece James coming into that squad this season has been an absolute revelation at the back. He's been a marvellous footballer to watch so far this season. It's just been their away record, which I can't get my head around. If they were able to sort that out, you know, they could even be a dark horse for promotion this season. At the moment, they're only sat 4 points off the playoffs, so anything's possible for this Wigan side this season at this point. And then with Gary Monk and Birmingham City, possibly one of the most underrated managers currently working in the Championship is Gary Monk. He's done a phenomenal job with Birmingham at the moment, considering the absolute turmoil they were going through, you know, throughout the summer, whether they'd be put under an embargo, whether they get a points deduction as well. They weren't able to sign the players they wanted to. What Gary Monk is getting out of this current group of players, who I don't mean to sound harsh, but it's definitely not the best squad in the Championship, but what he's currently getting out of them is absolutely superb. It's a group of players who want to play for this team. He's galvanised them into one belief, and currently they are under the longest unbeaten run in the Championship, sat 11th in the Championship. You know, this is a side who has been vastly underachieving in previous years in the Championship. They've been in relegation dogfights come the last day of the season, but finally they got a capable manager in there. He's built a defensive foundation for them to build on. Last season, goals were a problem for them, but scoring goals, you know, so far this season they look decent. Jukovic has looked very good so far this season. Che Adams has had his moments as well. Another person doing a very good job in the Championship at this moment is Graham Potter at Swansea City. Once again, considering the summer transfer window that Swansea went under, anything could have happened going into the season really. He's put a lot of trust in some of their young players so far this season, and they have definitely repaid him. I still feel as if come the end of the season, Swansea might not have enough goals in them going forward to go ahead and break into the top 6, but the fact that they're still aiming around that area of the table with all the new additions they brought in the summer transfer window, and with having a very young group of players in the Championship at this point in time, Swansea I think are doing a very good job. Tony Mowbray for Blackburn Rovers is also doing a fantastic job at this point in time in the Championship. You know, if I was to say to Blackburn fans that after 14 games you'd be sat 9th in the Championship, Championship, only a whisker away from the top 6. I'm sure they would have bit my hands off for that, but Tony Mowbray, what a fantastic job he's done since he's arrived at Blackburn. There have been a couple of occasions so far this season where the performances have dipped. You know, we saw that in midweek, losing 3-1 away to Swansea City. Before that, they got battered by Bristol City not too long ago as well. I don't quite think that this squad has what it takes to make it into the top 6 come the end of the season. I could be proved wrong with that, but I definitely think they'll be winning the top half this season, which for their first season back in the Championship, Tony Mowbray at the moment is doing an exceptional job for Blackburn. Lee Johnson and Bristol City up next, and Lee Johnson is a manager who I can never really figure out. Personally, I don't think he's the greatest manager in the Championship. I think that when it comes to some big crunch games for Bristol City, he tends to set them up a little bit naively at times. But Bristol City are that sort of side who rides on momentum. We'll see them win 5 games in a row, then we'll see them lose 5 games in a row. That's just the sort of side they tend to be, and they are now up to 8th in the Championship. They won their last 2 games. In those 2 games, I don't necessarily think that they've been the best performances, both picking up a 1-0 win, 1-0 away at Brentford, and then 1-0 at home against Hull City, with Jeju scoring a last-minute winner in that game. But there always seems to be with Bristol City that extra gear I feel like they can click up to, which they never really seem to achieve. Aita Karanka at Nottingham Forest is quite an interesting one to talk about. They're currently sat 7th in the Championship, and their performances have been a little bit all over the place so far this season. We've only seen them lose twice so far, however they have already drawn 7 games. A lot of money was invested into this Forest side in the summer, and with some of their performances, they've not always been totally convincing. I think the result in midweek will serve them very well going into the future games, actually. Beating Bolton Wanderers by 3-0, that was the sort of game where we've not really seen Forest really go and exploit teams defensively so far this season. All the games that Forest have been involved in have been fairly tight, but Lewis grabbing 2 goals in that game will be massive for them. A striker playing with confidence like that will be absolutely massive for them this season. Joe Lolly, another player who got on the score sheet in that game as well, been a player who's very impressed me so far this season. Come the end of the season, I think that Forest will be there or thereabouts in the playoffs. Will they make it? I think it's going to be very tight at the top 6 this season. Daniel Farke at Norwich City, I've got to say, has done an absolutely outstanding job. He was a manager who, I'm not going to lie, I'd wrote him off. I thought that at Norwich, they were just sort of meandering around the Championship. I thought that it would get to about Christmas, Norwich would be sat around 18th, and then they'd probably go and sack Daniel Farke and look to go into a different avenue. But fair play to Norwich and Daniel Farke. They've been on a fantastic run lately in the Championship, and what I have liked about Daniel Farke so much is he's been willing to test out young players and give them a chance. And on the whole, I think that has worked very well for Norwich City. They've invested quite a lot of foreign talent as well, a few players coming over from the Bundesliga. Not all of them clicking instantly, but quite a few of them have gone on to do well for Norwich. They're another side who I'm not totally convinced will be sat in the top 6 come the end of the season, but at the moment Daniel Farke is doing a very good job with them. And Frank Lampard and Derby County, currently 5th in the Championship. What a performance they had in midweek, beating West Brom by 4-1. What I like about Frank Lampard is it is a total contrast from Derby last year, really. Under Gary Rowett, where they were on the whole quite defence orientated, really. At times they weren't brilliant to watch. Under Frank Lampard though, some of their attacking football can be absolutely electric. I actually feel like Derby are better playing the bigger sides actually this season than they have been playing some of the sides at the bottom of the Championship. Teams who tend to set up quite defensively against Derby, they can get quite frustrated. I feel like Lampard needs to develop maybe a plan B against some of those sides, because going up against sides like West Brom and the performance they had against Brentford, when they're spacing behind for Derby to exploit, they can be one of the best sides to watch in the Championship. And Lampard's still learning his trade, still a very young manager to take into consideration, but on the whole I think he has done a very good job with this Derby side so far. With Darren Moore, he's on a bit of a dodgy patch with West Brom currently. They've gone ahead and lost their last 2 games in the Championship. If you look at their defensive record, it was sort of exploited by Derby, really. That's been something that's just sort of been lingering in the background for West Brom this season. That's not really going to wait, and Derby really went ahead and exploited that in the game in midweek. You know, we saw them earlier on in the season conceding some really sloppy goals. It wasn't the fastest of starts to the season for West Brom, but then as the partnership between Dwight Gale and Jay Rodriguez started to develop, we saw them really lifting up the Championship. Come the end of the season, if they are going to be in with contention of automatic promotion and to go on to win the Championship, which I think they are still the favourites to do at this point in time, defensively is where they're going to need to shape up, and Darren Moore's going to need to work on that throughout the season, because already in 14 games they've conceded 22 goals, which for a side going for the title, they need to sort that out. Manager in the Championship, who I don't really think gets enough praise actually, is Chris Wilder at Sheffield United. Last season they were brilliant to watch at times. We just saw them fall off towards the end of the season when Coots went and got injured for them, but this season so far they've been an absolute joy to behold. They currently sat 3rd in the Championship on 26 points and have been a really entertaining side to watch so far this season. I think that all the players players they brought in the transfer window have all gone to improve them actually from last season, either on the loan deal or coming in on a permanent basis. And come the end of the season, Sheffield United looking like a really strong contender for the top 6. I think Tony Pulis so far this season has done what we've expected him to do really. Already this season in 14 league games, we've seen Middlesbrough keep 9 clean sheets, which is absolutely mental. They've only conceded 7 goals so far this season, which is an absolutely brilliant defensive return. The frustrations with Middlesbrough at the moment is they're not really scoring that many goals. In 14 games, they've only scored 16 goals, just averaging more than 1 goal. And considering they are currently sat second in the Championship, you know, you'd expect them to score a few more. In midweek, we saw them draw 0-0 against Rotherham United. Quite a frustrating performance from the home side in that game, actually. I think it's fair to say that Middlesbrough aren't the most entertaining side to watch in the Championship. That's sort of what comes along with Tony Pulis, but it is an efficient way of playing football. You know, he does get results there. And so, come the end of the season, I think Middlesbrough, they'll be in the top 4 at least. I mean, no doubt about that. And then sat back at the top of the Championship, we have Bielsa and Leeds United. And Bielsa's impact on Leeds can't be underestimated, in my opinion. We've spoken about Bielsa quite a bit on the channel so far this season, but the football they're playing contrasts it to how they were at times last season, where they were in absolute shambles. And what I like about Bielsa the most, really, with this Leeds squad is they've not invested, you know, tons of money into this Leeds squad since Bielsa's been there. He's been working with the players who were already at Leeds from this time last season, and he's improved them all vastly. There is that, you know, contention where they will burn out come the end of the season. That has been an effect that Marcelo Bielsa has had in his sides previously. It'll be interesting to see how Leeds get on at the second half of the season, but I think for Leeds this season, it will be at least a top 6. But guys, there you have it. That is my opinion of every Championship manager so far this season, whether I think they're doing good or not, or whether I think they're in contention for being sacked in the next few weeks in the Championship. Make sure to let me know down below what have you made of your manager so far this season. But apart from that, guys, that will now wrap it up for this video. So if you did go in to enjoy, make sure you do leave a like. It is always massively appreciated. As well as that, make sure you check out all the other links in the description down below. But apart from that, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.